Back in the glory days, America didn't just build cars, it built land battleships. These 10 giants were so big, they needed parking spots the size of a football field. And when they rolled down the street, the pavement literally trembled. With monstrous V8s under the hood and enough steel to build a bridge, they weren't just cars, they were moving monuments of power.
Subscribe now. More rare and forbidden cars are coming your way.
Number 10. We're taking a joyride back to 1969 with a Pontiac Bonneville, a car so big and bold it practically had its own zip code. First off, this baby wasn't just a car, it was a rolling billboard for American muscle and swagger. Long, wide, and dressed in chrome like it was going to a black tie gala, the Bonneville screamed, "I'm here, I'm loaded with power, and you better make way." Slide into the driver's seat, and you weren't just driving, you were commanding the highway like a general leading the cavalry. Under the hood, the Bonneville didn't mess around. Big V8s? Check. Tons of torque? Check. Enough horsepower to make a semi-truck think twice about cutting you off? Double check. This was a car that accelerated like it had a personal vendetta against stoplights. Inside, it was like a lounge on wheels. Wide bench seats, plush upholstery, and enough interior space to host a family reunion or a debate club meeting, maybe even both at the same time. Safety? Well, let's just say it relied on guts, skill, and a little bit of blind faith, because airbags were science fiction and seatbelts were optional. But that's part of the charm. The Bonneville demanded respect, confidence, and a firm grip on the wheel. The public reaction? People either loved it or couldn't wrap their heads around it. It was big, brash, and unashamedly American, a car that could soak up the gas prices and spit out style at the same time. On the streets, it didn't just move traffic, it made a statement, and sometimes that statement was, "Don't even think about merging in front of me, pal." In short, the 1969 Pontiac Bonneville was all chrome, power, and presence, a road-going reminder that in America, bigger often meant better, or at least more memorable. And while it might have guzzled gas like a frat party on a weekend, it did it with style, flair, and a little bit of attitude. So next time you see a Bonneville cruising by, tip your hat. You're witnessing a true king of the asphalt jungle, a rolling American icon, and a muscle-bound statement on wheels. Number 9. Let's talk about the 1970 Lincoln Mark III. A car that didn't just arrive on the road, it landed like a presidential jet on wheels. This beast was all about jet-age swagger. Long, low, and wide enough to make parallel parking a contact sport. The Mark III had styling so sharp it could slice through traffic with authority. Chrome accents, a bold grille, and fins that practically announced, "I'm here and you're gonna notice." This wasn't a car for blending in at the grocery store. Nope, it was a car for making an entrance like you owned the asphalt. Under the hood, a big, burly V8 that growled like a caged lion and propelled the Mark III forward with a kind of gusto that made sedans and station wagons look like tricycles. Handling was a bit of a challenge. This thing weighed more than a small army division. But that was beside the point. It drove like a throne on wheels, and the road knew it. Inside, it was all luxury, comfort, and look-at-me vibes. Plush leather, wood trim, and enough space to host a cabinet meeting or a family reunion. If James Bond needed a car to negotiate treaties, this would have been it. Safety? Well, let's say you relied on your wits, your reflexes, and a strong right foot. The public reaction? Some people were dazzled, others were jealous, and a few were just plain intimidated. That's the Mark III effect. It dominated every street it touched and left a trail of jaw drops in its wake. The 1970 Lincoln Mark III was all presence, all style, and all American audacity. It wasn't just a car, it was a statement, a throne, and a jet-age dream that drove like a boss. Number 8. All right, folks, let's roll out the red carpet for the 1971 Oldsmobile 98 Regency. A car that wasn't just transportation, it was a rolling freaking mansion on wheels. This baby was top-tier luxury, the kind of ride that said, "I don't drive, I glide, and the world better notice." Long, wide, and dressed in chrome like it was heading straight to a White House gala, the 98 Regency made every other sedan look like a go-kart. You didn't just sit in this car, you reclined, stretched, and maybe even napped like a president on the campaign trail. Under the hood, a big V8 that could move the car with authority. Because when you're piloting a 12-foot-long land yacht, you don't want to roll up to a stoplight feeling like you're rowing a canoe. Handling was leisurely, acceleration smooth, and braking, well, let's just say you needed a little foresight and a lot of confidence, because stopping all that steel was no joke. Inside, it was all comfort, all style, and all swagger. Plush seats, fancy trim, and enough interior space to host your cabinet meeting, your family reunion, and maybe a jazz trio. The radio likely played Sinatra, the AC worked like a small Arctic system, and you felt untouchable behind that wheel. Public reaction? Everyone knew when the old 98 Regency rolled by. Head-turning, jaw-dropping, and occasionally windshield wiping from sheer admiration. It was a car that said, "I'm here to cruise, I'm here to impress, and I might just take up 3 lanes doing it." In short, the 1971 Oldsmobile 98 Regency wasn't just a car, it was a statement of American luxury, ambition, and over-the-top style. If you had one, you didn't just arrive, you made an entrance worthy of a presidential parade. Number 7. This baby was muscle and chrome, wrapped around a frame so big and bold it could make smaller cars feel like they'd accidentally wandered onto the wrong lot. The 500 XL wasn't subtle. Nah, it strutted down Main Street like it owned the place, gleaming in the sun, with tail fins and shiny trim saying, "Step aside, peasants, I'm rolling through." Under that hood, powerful V8s that roared like a caged lion, ready to launch you down the boulevard faster than a campaign promise disappears after Election Day. Handling wasn't exactly nimble. This wasn't a go-kart, it was a steel missile with leather seats. But you didn't buy a Galaxy for cornering. You bought it to cruise, turn heads, and maybe scare the neighborhood kids. Inside, it was roomy enough for the whole family, a couple of friends, and possibly a small marching band. Chrome accents glinted everywhere. The steering wheel was as wide as a grin, and the dashboard told you one thing loud and clear: you're in charge now, citizen. Public reaction? People stopped, stared, and whispered, and some probably muttered, "Man, that car's got more personality than the mayor." The Galaxy 500 XL didn't just get you from point A to point B. It made every street a runway, every light a red carpet moment. In short, the 1965 Ford Galaxy 500 XL was pure American swagger in metal and chrome. A car that screamed power, style, and "I'm here to dominate the road, baby." Number 6. This bad boy was long, wide, and unapologetically American, gliding down the highway like it owned every lane. You didn't just drive a LeBaron, you made an entrance, whether at the grocery store or the drive-in. Its size alone could intimidate smaller cars into moving over, and the chrome trim, shiny enough to blind your rear-view mirror buddies on a sunny day. Under the hood, you had a big old V8, guzzling gas like a politician slurping campaign coffee. But hey, this was luxury, not efficiency. Inside, you were wrapped in leather and plush seats, with room for your friends, family, and maybe the neighbor's dog. Heck, the car was practically a moving living room. Handling? Let's be real. It floated more than it steered, but that was part of the charm. You weren't racing a Mustang. You were cruising like a boss, waving to the peasants in their compact cars. Public reaction? Some folks gawked, some laughed, some envied, and some probably whispered, "Dang, that thing's a mile long." In short, the 1972 Chrysler Imperial LeBaron was the ultimate highway barge, a statement of wealth, power, and don't mess with me on the interstate. It was America in steel, chrome, and leather, all rolled into one giant, glorious, gas-guzzling package. Number 5. The 1968 Dodge Monaco. The kind of car that walked into a parking lot and everyone else suddenly felt small. This baby wasn't just a car, it was a full-sized muscle cruiser. Big, bold, and basically saying, "Move over, peasants, the king's rolling through." Under the hood, you had a V8 that growled louder than a bull on espresso, making it perfectly capable of leaving smaller sedans eating dust. And yes, it was huge, long enough to double as a small stage for your high school marching band if you were feeling ambitious. Inside, you were sitting in a cushy, wide bench seat. Plenty of room for your buddies, your cousin's dog, and maybe even a cooler full of soda. Handling? Well, let's say you didn't corner like a sports car, but you cruised like a boss, sliding through turns like a powerboat on asphalt. Style-wise, the Monaco had that classic late 60s Dodge vibe. Squared off, no nonsense, with just enough chrome to let folks know you weren't messing around. Public reaction? People stared, jaws dropped, and some probably whispered, "Man, that thing's bigger than my apartment." In short, the 1968 Dodge Monaco was a rolling statement of raw American muscle, comfort, and unapologetic size. It wasn't subtle, and it didn't need to be. This was a car that said, "I came to crush it," figuratively and literally. Number 4. The 1970 Chevrolet Impala convertible, the land yacht of land yachts. This wasn't just a car, nah. This was a four-wheeled cruise ship with a V8 captain barking orders under the hood. Picture it. You roll up to the boulevard in this monster, top down, chrome shining like a disco ball at Studio 44. People didn't hear you coming, they felt you coming. That V8 didn't whisper, it thundered, like a bar band that never learned how to play quiet. Now, calling it a convertible almost undersells it. When that roof dropped, it wasn't just you driving, it was a parade. Kids waved, dogs barked, old folks shaded their eyes like, "Dang, is that Elvis back from the dead?" It had that kind of presence. Of course, with all that size, it handled about as gracefully as a drunk elephant on roller skates. Forget parallel parking. If you managed to wedge this beast into a spot without kissing 3 bumpers, you deserved a medal and maybe your own TV show. And let's not ignore the gas tank situation. This baby drank premium like it was cheap beer at a tailgate. No shame, no hesitation. You didn't measure miles per gallon, you measured gallons per mile. But hey, back then, gas was pocket change, so who cared? The Impala wasn't about saving fuel. It was about flexing American muscle, plain and simple. So, what was the 1970 Impala convertible, really? It was big chrome energy, a couch on wheels, a declaration that if you weren't driving something the size of your living room, you were doing it wrong. Sure, it wasn't practical, but nobody bought one of these beasts for practicality. They bought it to feel like the king of Main Street. Number 3. Now we're talking about the 1966 Buick Electra 225, better known on the street as the Deuce and a Quarter. Man, that nickname alone tells you this car wasn't some dinky little runabout. This thing was 225 inches of pure Detroit steel, stretched longer than your uncle's fishing stories and twice as heavy. You didn't just drive an Electra 225, you commanded it, like a captain at the helm of a battleship. Slide behind that steering wheel and you weren't worried about potholes, curbs, or even small cars. You just plowed ahead, and the road moved out of your way. And let's be real, this beast had presence. Pull up to the diner in a Deuce and a Quarter, and everybody knew who the boss was. Chrome shining, seats wide enough to host a family reunion, and an engine that rumbled like it had a grudge against silence. It was smooth, too. Buick made sure this ride floated down the road like you were cruising on a cloud, even if that cloud was made of steel and guzzled gas like a frat boy at happy hour. Now, parallel parking, forget about it. Trying to wedge one of these into a downtown space was like trying to land a 747 on a cul-de-sac. You just circled the block until you found somewhere the car could actually fit, which was usually 2 spaces and a half. Bottom line, the 1966 Buick Electra 225 was more than a car. It was a statement, a rolling monument to size, style, and swagger. If you had one back then, you weren't just driving, You were arriving. Number 2. The 1971 Cadillac Fleetwood 75. The kind of ride that didn't just show up, it took over the whole dang block. This wasn't a car you parked, this was a car you deployed. Now, the Fleetwood 75 was Cadillac's top-dog stretch limousine, a yacht with wheels. Except instead of floating on water, it floated down Main Street like it owned the joint. This thing was over 20 feet long, which meant if you drove one, you basically had 2 zip codes, one for the front seat and another for the back. Speaking of the back, the rear compartment was so roomy, you could practically host a poker night back there while the chauffeur handled the steering. We're talking plush seats, footrests, ashtrays. Heck, I wouldn't be surprised if someone smuggled a minibar in one of those. Riding in this caddy wasn't transportation, it was a rolling VIP lounge. And let's not forget the engine. Under that football field hood sat Cadillac's big V8, ready to move this skyscraper on wheels down the highway with surprising ease. Sure, it slurped gas like it was free, but in the early 70s, gas was cheaper than a cup of diner coffee, so who cared? Now, maneuvering this beast in traffic, that was a different story. Trying to U-turn a Fleetwood 75 was like trying to turn around a barge in a swimming pool. And good luck parallel parking it. You'd need a football field and 3 buddies waving their arms like airport marshals. But man, when this limo rolled up, people noticed. It was the official ride of presidents, mob bosses, rock stars, and anybody who wanted to scream, "Yeah, I've made it, and I brought my entourage too." Bottom line, the 1971 Cadillac Fleetwood 75 wasn't just a car, it was a mobile power statement. Too big for the city, too thirsty for the gas crisis, but way too cool to ignore. It didn't whisper class, it shouted it through a megaphone. Number 1. The 1965 Lincoln Continental. Now that's not just a car, folks, that's a statement on wheels. You didn't just drive a Continental, you arrived in one. And if you rolled up in this beast, people didn't just look, they saluted. First off, let's talk size. This baby stretched out over 19 feet long. 19 feet! That's not a sedan, that's basically a studio apartment with chrome trim. You could measure it in yards and it'd still sound ridiculous. Try squeezing one of these into a downtown parking spot. You'd need NASA engineers and a spotter crew like you're docking the space shuttle. But the crown jewel, the cherry on top, the mic drop feature of the 65 Continental, those suicide doors. That's right, doors that swung open from the middle like some kind of gangster cathedral. Nothing said classy menace like stepping out backwards into the world. It wasn't just an exit, it was an entrance in reverse. Presidents rode in it, mob bosses loved it, and the average Joe just dreamed of it. You rolled those doors open and the world knew you meant business. Now under the hood, Lincoln wasn't playing around. Big V8, smooth as butter, and torque that could pull a house off its foundation. This thing didn't accelerate, it glided. Driving a Continental was less about speed and more about authority. It was like piloting an aircraft carrier down Route 66, slow, steady, but absolutely unstoppable. Inside, forget it, luxury everywhere. Plush leather seats, walnut trim, enough space to host Thanksgiving dinner in the back seat. Honestly, you didn't need a living room if you owned one of these. Just park it in the driveway, invite the neighbors in, and boom, mobile cocktail lounge. Of course, being this massive had its downsides. Gas mileage? Don't even ask. Let's just say you could watch the fuel gauge drop like a rock every time you hit the gas pedal. And maintenance? If something broke, you were selling a kidney to fix it. But hey, if you were rolling in a Lincoln Continental, chances are you already had a few spare kidneys lying around. Bottom line, the 1965 Lincoln Continental was an American icon. Big, bold, and built like a battleship. With those suicide doors, it wasn't just a car, it was a ceremony on wheels. When you pulled up in one of these, people didn't just notice, they remembered.